Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Okay, let's go. I'm gonna do all the England videos he has.
Hi, I'm Rick Steve.
Great channel. My name's Connor. Hey, let's go.
Back with more of the best of Europe. This time, we're enjoying both historic and natural highlights. Just hanging out on the southeast coast of England. Thanks for joining us.
Ready. I'd imagine this is the more populated part of England, but I don't know.
Traveling across the south of England, we'll ponder the military underpinnings of a maritime society that hasn't been invaded in 1,000 years. At the same time...
What about William of Orange, okay? I don't get it. How is that not considered one? Okay, sorry.
We'll have some fun with the Brits at play and connect with their great outdoors.
We'll admire Henry II's formidable castle. Prowl through Britain's most historic war...
Was it William of Orange? I hope I didn't sound like an idiot.
Warship, II's formidable castle. Prowl through Britain's most historic warship. See where the Archbishop of Canterbury
HMS Victory.
works. Glide on a dreamy stream. Holiday on a Victorian pier. Marvel at a royal seaside pleasure palace. And hike an unforgettable bluff. Great Britain is dominated by England, and we'll explore its...
Are you guys almost, like, how far inland is it chalk? You know what I mean? Isn't it chalk? So, never, it's not that important. Never mind. All right.
Great Britain is dominated by England, and we'll explore its southeast coast. Starting in Dover, we'll visit Canterbury, the site of the Battle of Hastings, Beachy Head, Brighton, and Portsmouth.
Hey, we have a Portsmouth too. Every New England town is not original. I've quickly learned that. That's for sure.
Brighton and Portsmouth.
The White Cliffs of Dover overlook the English Channel. Ever since ancient Roman times,
you see Calais?
those traveling from the continent to Britain set their sights on these famous cliffs. If they were enemies, troops based here fended them off.
Today, the crossing between the port of Dover and France is a shipping thoroughfare. Ferries and freighters shuttle passengers and an endless stream of trucks back and forth. France is just 23 miles away. There it is, within sight on a sunny day.
No. No. So that is, right? So that's France?
France...
I mean, there's no way that's France from England. There's no way.
...is just 23 miles away. There it is, within sight on a sunny day. Southern England sits upon a...
Whoa, 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 whoa. Stop. This isn't the view from France, is it? Or the view from... There's no way you can see that far. I can't even see Block Island.
There it is, within sight on a sunny day. Southern England sits upon a foundation of chalk, and there are miles of white cliffs towering above its beaches.
I want to know how far inland the chalk goes.
The most famous are the White Cliffs of Dover. And Dover, with its bold bluffs and mighty castle, symbolizes the defense of Britain. Sitting atop those cliffs is the impressive Dover Castle. This site was England's primary defensive stronghold from ancient Roman until modern times. For many centuries, English troops were garrisoned within these walls, protecting the coast from any European menace. This Roman lighthouse is a reminder that 2,000 years ago, the Romans landed here and established their colony of Britannia.
The Roman fleet was based here in Dover Harbor. To guide their boats safely home, they burned wet wood by day for maximum smoke and dry wood by night for maximum light.
Long considered the key to England by potential invaders, Dover Castle provides a quick review of England's defensive military history. Upon an earthen mound, originally part of an Iron Age fortress, is a many-layered complex with remnants from each age. In the 12th century, the Norman king Henry II had this fortress built, making Dover's castle the most secure in his realm. With his troops at the ready and walls 20 feet thick, King Henry slept soundly on the top floor. Much later, around 1800, with the threat of Napoleon, Dover's fortifications were beefed up again. With the advent of artillery, the English dug defensive tunnels deep into the chalk. With the outbreak of World War II, more bomb-proof tunnels were dug. Today, visitors enjoy a fascinating tour. As if frozen in time, the rooms give an intimate look at how the British foiled the attempted Nazi invasion. They used an elaborate communication center to coordinate critical decisions with what was, at the time, state-of-the-art equipment. One command center coordinated the defense against German ships. As an island nation, control of the seas around Great Britain for the free movement of both naval and merchant vessels was critical. Another command center defended against the German Air Force. Attacking Nazi aircraft were charted on screens, and Battle of Britain defenses were plotted. From these tunnels, Winston Churchill and Allied commanders defended a battle zone nicknamed Hellfire Corner. The underground hospital's operating room is a reminder that this strategic bluff was under constant fire. Emerging from the tunnels, visitors gaze toward France. Thankfully, more than 70 years after the war, this bluff oversees not bullets and bombs, but trade and tourism.
I didn't know that you could see it so clearly.
While Dover was of great military importance, a half-hour drive away is Canterbury, long one of England's most important religious centers. For centuries,
So the Archbishop of Canterbury is a sort of like Pope's Pope, or no, like I'm asking a question. I don't know if I'm phrasing it as a question, but it is a question. They're like the Catholic authority figure within England that had to report to Rome, right?
Canterbury welcomed crowds of pilgrims to its grand cathedral. While these days you'll see more tourists than pilgrims, the town is rich in history and architectural splendor. With thousands of university students and a thriving pedestrian zone, Canterbury has a lively and youthful energy. The town center is enclosed by old city walls and cut in two by its main drag. Patches of modern architecture are a reminder that much of Canterbury was bombed in World War II. For a leisurely, water-level view of Canterbury, take a calm cruise on the Stower River. Students, propelling their punts by the traditional single pole, offer an easygoing commentary.
So this is the Stower.
The Great Stower River. The great part's important because there's about 6 river stowers in Britain.
This is the great one?
This is the great one. The Anglo-Saxons weren't very imaginative. And
This is the great one.
This is the great one?
This is the great one. The Anglo-Saxons weren't very imaginative, and they named things.
Well, and their other rivers were pretty small.
Yeah,
The water's pretty clear.
it's crystal clear. It's because it's a chalk river. So, obviously, Kent is very famous for having chalky soil with the White Cliffs of Dover.
Yeah.
And chalk rivers, the chalk filters the water, so you get this clear water.
On Butchery Lane, the surviving medieval buildings jut out with each floor. That was to maximize usable land as the
That's so cool. It's like it's all like caving in on you.
population crowded with
That doesn't sound like a cool thing, but it just
out
it
with
just-
each
it-
floor. That was to maximize usable land as the population crowded within the town's protective walls.
So you don't have. I notice in a lot of European cities, there are a lot of areas in those cities where either if you were going in a car, it would have to be a small one and you'd have to make sure no one's coming the other way, or maybe it's a one way, or it's just you're not getting through there in a car. And there are still shops and things. So there are a lot of strictly walkway, maybe bike, even a bike, honestly. Like they were that skinny, some of them. I'm not just talking about the UK, but, you know, Germany, France, Switzerland, Austria area, those countries. The US has very few of those, I think. I explained that terribly. It's cool.
To maximize usable land as the population crowded within the town's protective walls. A square called Butter Market, originally the Dairy Market, still functions as the center of the old town. The buildings here were originally designed to house and feed the pilgrims, whose money essentially built this city. For generations, those pilgrims passed through this fancy gate to reach their destination, Canterbury Cathedral. For centuries, an important Roman Catholic church, the cathedral had a tumultuous path to eventually become the headquarters of the Church of England, known outside of England as the Anglican or Episcopalian Church.
Episcopalian. Hey, I learned that. I just learned. There are all these, Protestant, Catholic, easy enough to understand, but then you get like Lutheran, Episcopalian, all these other things, and I'd honestly like to. I'm not a very religious person, but it's part of history, and so I'd like to learn more solid understanding of the different types of Christianity.
As the Anglican or Episcopalian Church. Stepping inside, you're swept away by the graceful blend of soaring Gothic lines,
Nice archways.
stirring windows, and fine stonework. The bell tower soars about 200 feet high. Gaze way up at the delicate fan vaulting at the highest point.
Beautiful arches.
The finely carved 15th century choir screen is decorated with statues of 6 English kings. This wall, or screen, separated the church into 2 distinct zones. One side was for the public. Then, stepping through, as if entering another world, you entered the private space of monks, where each day they'd gather to worship. The cathedral grew in importance and wealth after an infamous murder back in the 12th century put it on the pilgrimage trail.
In an attempt to gain power over the church, King Henry II appointed his friend, Thomas Beckett, to be the new archbishop. But Beckett unexpectedly took his position and his religion seriously, very seriously. And Henry was stuck with a strong church leader blocking his power.
As tensions rose, King Henry complained bitterly about Beckett. Finally, his knights took action, hacking the archbishop to death as he was worshiping on this spot.
Yikes.
The murder shocked the medieval world. Soon word spread that miracles were occurring here. The Pope made Beckett a saint, and masses of pilgrims came.
I know it's probably getting old, but here it's like if there's a bar, it's like, oh, Abraham Lincoln went to this bar here. It's like, oh my God, that's crazy old. This is like, yeah, 1,000 years ago, right here, this happened is just such a treat, I get, or I think you guys are so lucky to have.
Soon word spread that miracles were occurring here. The Pope made Beckett a saint, and masses of pilgrims came. With the steady stream of pilgrims, the church grew bigger and more important.
Several centuries and several Henrys later, King Henry VIII broke away entirely from the Roman Catholic Church so he could run his affairs without popes and bishops meddling.
Implementing his Reformation, Henry VIII purged the nave of its ornate decorations and Catholic iconography. He destroyed the relics of Beckett, and pilgrims stopped coming.
Henry made this cathedral the leading church of his now independent Church of England. And today, Canterbury Cathedral, seat of the Archbishop of Canterbury, is the mother church of Anglicans worldwide.
A scenic hour's drive takes us to the town of Battle, where in 1066, the Normans invading from France conquered the English. The town, with its medieval abbey overlooking the main square, is named for the Battle of Hastings. For the English, a visit here is a kind of historic pilgrimage. The site is a mix of abbey architecture built on the actual battlefield. Just a vast field today. With the help of the audio guide commentary, you can imagine Europe's epic medieval battle.
Norman troops relentlessly hammer at what remains of the shield wall. There's fierce and bloody hand-to-hand fighting. William is in the thick of it and loses another horse. But more and more holes in the English defences open up. As the English position weakens, the Normans press home their advantage.
With it being so long ago, it's even with like Civil War battlefields where it's only 150 years ago. I mean, was this field still the way, entire forests have, probably come up and down several times since the Battle of Hastings. So I'm trying to picture it, but at the same time, like, it must have looked so different.
The Normans press home their advantage.
7,000 soldiers died in one day. It was the most memorable date of the Middle Ages, October 14, 1066. Across the channel in Normandy, the 9th-century-old Bayeux tapestry tells the complicated story. Basically, the English king died without a clear heir. An Anglo-Saxon noble named Harold and a French-born Duke of Normandy named William both claimed the throne. William and the Normans crossed the channel. They fought furiously on the fields of Hastings. Harold was killed, according to legend, by an arrow in the eye, and William became William the Conqueror.
The Battle of Hastings was a big deal. From here, the Norman invaders swept into London, where William was crowned King of England and built the Tower of London to defend his realm. The Norman conquest of England established a strong, centralized government and propelled what had been an isolated island of Britain into the European mainstream. Today, nearly 1,000 years later, this successful invasion is seen as a good thing by the people of England.
But enough war history.
I wonder if Harold didn't have to go north if maybe he would have won.
Let's hit.
Didn't they have to go north to fight Viking invaders and then go back south to fight William?
The beat.
Good thing by the people of England.
But enough war history. Let's hit the beach. Brighton is South England's Coney Island. Britain's royalty helped establish Brighton as a resort back around 1800, when Napoleon's wars shut down vacation travel on the continent. King George IV chose Brighton to build a
I can't imagine vacation travel in the late 1700s, early 1800s.
Palace for himself. King George IV chose Brighton to build a vacation palace for himself, and royal followers began a frenzy of construction along the nearby seashore. Soon, this once sleepy seaside village was transformed into an elegant resort town. In 1840, the train connected London with Brighton.
I just have to say, guys, I don't know why. I have to say it. This guy always reminds me of Professor Lockhart from Harry Potter. I'm sorry. I don't know why. He just, every time I see his picture, I'm like, Lockhart. Sorry. All right. It had to be said. It's the truth.
An elegant
I don't know why.
Town. In 1840, the train connected London with Brighton. Suddenly, these beaches were accessible to the working class masses, and Brighton has been London by the sea ever since. Two landmarks line the promenade. The latest eye-catcher is a futuristic observation tower. But the big draw remains its pleasure pier. Built in 1899 and jutting far into the water, it gave everyone a chance to enjoy the sea. Glittering and loaded with amusements, Brighton Pier is the place to go for a fix of junk food, including some candy floss, that's cotton candy, and
Candy
to
floss.
survive dizzying rides.
I'm good. Thanks.
If
Thank
you can
you.
ignore the garish
This is where I'm a wimp when it comes to this, to like roller coasters and theme park rides. I don't like to get dizzy. I hate it. Spinning rides. Like the teacup. No. I'm more of like it's a small world after. I remember I was at Busch Gardens. This will always stick with me. We were at I don't know why. We were at Busch Gardens, Florida. And there's this roller coaster called the King de Ka. And like it was super tall, and this isn't a great story. I'm setting up for failure. The point is, I didn't go on the roller coaster. I wimped out. And then I went on one called the Cheetah Chase instead. And even that was still too much for me. Anyways, sorry. That wasn't a good story. I don't know why I started it. I'm good. Just metal things that can... sorry.
If you can ignore the garish arcade games, you might be able to imagine yourself as a Victorian Londoner out on holiday. Just a couple blocks from the People's Pier was the King's Palace.
Taj Mahal.
Brighton's Royal Pavilion, with its eccentric exterior, recalls the city's flamboyant heyday.
Looks Islamic
Its interior,
architecture.
which retains its 1820s decor, is even more outlandish. As a prince, the man who would become England's King George IV was lively, decadent, and trend-setting. He loved to vacation by the sea and host glamorous parties. George was enamored with Asian cultures, styling his vacation home with exotic decorations from the Far East. Music was a passion of the king. In the music room, the royal band gave concerts and serenaded high society guests as they danced under Chinese-inspired decor. The king's other passion? Hosting elaborate dinners.
I really knew nothing about this king before, so
This king-sized kitchen was one of the most innovative of its time. The huge rotisserie could cook enough meat to feed 100 hungry guests. Here in the banqueting room, the table's set for dessert. Imagine England's pre-Victorian elite munching cream cakes and sipping liqueurs under the extravagant, dragon-powered chandelier.
you really like dragons or East culture, huh?
You can imagine, King George was an extravagant spender, and he left piles of debt. Shortly after his death, his niece, Victoria, took the throne. Queen Victoria wanted more privacy and less decadence, so she sold the pavilion to the city of Brighton, which owns it to this day.
After visiting a resort town, England's natural beauty provides a delightful contrast. These chalk cliffs are often mistaken for Dovers, but they're the white cliffs of Beachy Head. Same chalk, same coastline, but further west. Beachy Head is carpeted by a vast grassy field, wild yet smooth as a
I need to know why. Like, why? How?
putting green reaching up to a dramatic drop-off. With the open sea beyond and white chalk cliffs plummeting 500 feet into the surf, this scene thrills hikers.
Couldn't ask for a better
From
defense,
here,
huh?
a long undulating series of cliffs stretches for miles. Long ago, these were dubbed the Seven Sisters by groggy sailors at sea who gazed lustily through the mist from their ships and imagined a can-can of seven maidens lifting their lacy petticoats.
Of course, classic.
While this chalk may have looked like lace from a distance, in the fog, in a drunken stupor, it's actually the shelly sediment of the seabed, solidified over 100 million years and then raised high by the slow-motion collision of continents.
The handy hamlet of
Is that what chalk is? Like crushed sea sediment, sea shellfish?
Burling Gap has an inviting visitor center. The handy hamlet of Burling Gap has an inviting visitor center. Its stairway provides the only convenient access to the beach.
I wonder if the tide gets right up to the cliff.
Early birds get the sandy spots among the pebbles, and the tide pools are a hit with the kids. Beachy Head is just one stretch of the
This just reminds me when I was a kid. You guys ever go like catching for clams? I remember my grandpa would, like, I would just like get a clam out of the sand and bring it to him. He'd just open it and like put hot sauce or ketchup and just like toss it down and just eat it. But I remember if you take on low tide, if you take a nice sized rock and throw it up the air and let it land, you'll see like the spurt of like all clams underneath, like spurt up water. But you have to go quick because they'll dig down, and that'll like help you find out where they are. That just brought me back. I don't know.
Beachy Head is just one stretch of the South Downs Way, one of many beloved public walks that crisscross Britain. The English love to ramble and enjoy historic points along the way. Around here, as this mysterious horse illustrates, art has been carved into the underlying chalk of the hillsides for generations.
Oh yeah, isn't there
Towering figures like the Long Man of Wilmington go back many centuries. The countryside feels made to order for easy walks. A delightful stop is the hamlet of East Dean, which still gathers around its medieval green. When hiking in England, it seems you're never far from a friendly pub. By the way, we're here in August. I like England in peak season. Long days, best weather, and there are enough people out for things to be lively, but never really a crowd problem. A major city on England's south coast is the busy port of Portsmouth, long the home of the Royal Navy. For centuries, Britain, a maritime superpower, relied on the fleets based here to maintain and expand its vast empire. As an obvious military target, Portsmouth was nearly flattened by World War II bombs, but has been rebuilt since 1945. Its cathedral survived only because the Nazis used it as a beacon to help guide their bombs. With post-war construction hasty and poorly planned, the city became infamous for its bad architecture. But an impressive gentrification is underway. As the Navy shrinks and tourism grows, Portsmouth is enjoying new life. Underneath a sail-like tower, its formerly gritty industrial waterfront has been transformed into a vital shopping and restaurant complex. The once formidable ramparts are now a park-like promenade lined with historic points of interest, mostly ignored by those simply enjoying a refreshing stroll. With the notoriously blustery weather, local kids gather at the base of the wall. Nicknamed the Hot Walls, it's out of the wind and retains warmth from the unreliable English sun. At the tip of the ramparts, formerly salty old pubs now serve not sailors, but a trendy crowd. Their conversation is punctuated by the passage of massive ships and ferries artfully powering through the narrow mouth of the harbor.
Sort of reminds me of Newport.
Back when Britannia ruled the waves, it did so with its mighty navy, based here in Portsmouth's
HMS
historic
Victory?
dockyard. This sprawling museum
Nelson?
highlights England's storied maritime heritage,
Conqueror?
both very old and relatively new, like this gunboat from World War I that saw action at the Battle of Gallipoli. In a modern building just steps away is the oldest ship in the collection, the Mary Rose, or what's left of her. This awe-inspiring
like
in its day
Queen
warship,
Elizabeth time?
King Henry VIII's favorite, sank in 1545 while fighting the French just off the coast.
Francis Drake?
The ship and its doomed crew of 500 sank and settled into the mud, where it rested for about 450 years.
Sorry, I'm just shouting out random British sailor names, I know, sorry.
Sank and settled into the mud, where it rested for about 450 years. The surviving bits of the ship, with a rich trove of artifacts, have been preserved and are beautifully displayed. All sorts of Tudor-era items were found. Personal belongings, weaponry, a backgammon board, and even the skeleton of Hatch, the ship's dog.
Backgammon's that old,
A
huh?
backgammon board, and even the skeleton of Hatch,
I
the
don't even know
ship's
how to
dog.
play.
These artifacts humanize the everyday life of English sailors from 5 centuries ago. 3 centuries later, another state-of-the-art warship was the HMS Warrior. Built in 1860, it never saw a day of battle. That's because the Warrior was so formidable, it was considered unbeatable. Its very existence was sufficient to keep the peace.
Wow.
The Warrior was the first ironclad warship. Was
Wow.
sufficient.
You can tell, as I see cannons over time, they get a more narrow front part of it, almost like what you tend to see in like World War I style artillery. You know, it becomes like separate pieces, like a lightsaber. You know, like those old plastic lightsabers that you could like go like this and it fling out. It kind of looks like that same design. Interesting.
To keep the peace.
And is that breech loading?
Beatable. Its very existence was sufficient to keep the peace. The Warrior was the first ironclad warship, a huge technological advance. It had about a 10-year window of invincibility. But after 1870, with the advent of guns on turrets and stronger steam engines replacing sails altogether, the Warrior was mothballed. About 200 years ago, the most important British ship ever,
Victory?
the HMS Victory, changed the course of world history.
The French Emperor Napoleon had been terrorizing the continent. By 1805, he had amassed a huge fleet and was
Trafalgar.
preparing to invade England. Admiral Horatio Nelson, who commanded the British fleet from this ship, cornered the French fleet at the Cape of Trafalgar off the coast of Spain. The huge Battle of Trafalgar ensued. While Nelson was killed, the British emerged victorious.
Today, the dry-docked Victory feels ready to haul anchor and set sail at any moment. For the British, this ship is more a shrine than a museum. The Victory bristles with cannon lining several gun decks. It took well-trained British sailors only 2 minutes to ready a cannon
It's like a giant floating shotgun.
for firing, aim, and shoot, compared to 8 minutes for the French. Inside
Imagine
on the
seeing
gun
them
decks,
all
you
go.
can imagine the noise, smoke, and confusion of battle as cannons fired in unison, recoiled, and were reloaded. All the while, enemy fire crashed into and splintered the ship around the men. Climbing through the ship with its low ceilings, you can feel how cramped the living conditions were. There was no such thing as privacy, and the tight quarters created a forest of hammocks.
I think they have bigger cannons, the lower decks, because you didn't want the ship to be top heavy.
Sailors slept right where they fought. When not in battle, they ate at tables wedged between their guns.
Hardtack or something.
The great cabin was Admiral Nelson's quarters. Imagine Nelson and his officers hunched over charts to plan an attack. While it looks like an officer's living quarters, everything was designed for action.
Is that a
In
wood
minutes,
stove?
the furniture could be folded and stowed, turning this space into a fully functional cannon deck.
Was that a wood stove? Isn't that a fire hazard on a ship? Or
Was designed for
is that like where maybe you burn documents? Is that like a 19th century shredder machine?
action. In minutes, the furniture could be folded and stowed, turning this space into a fully functional cannon deck.
Oh, wow.
During that fateful Battle of Trafalgar, Nelson was shot by a sniper. A golden plaque on the deck marks the spot where Nelson fell. The crew rushed him below deck
Did that mean you had to take out part of the wooden plank where he fell, though, to put that there?
on the deck marks the spot where Nelson fell.
Sorry, I'm
The
being...
crew rushed him below deck to care for their leader in his dying hours. It's on this spot that Nelson died.
So this spot here was, so when Lord Nelson was mortally wounded on the upper deck, he was taken down here. Just before he was about to die, Captain Hardy come down and said to him, "Sir, we've won the battle." And he said, "Thank God I've done my duty."
Romantic paintings show the Admiral lifted to heaven by angels, like a saint. 2 centuries later, Nelson's England clearly enjoys its hard-won freedom. We've seen that with its love of nature, with its knack for family fun, its appreciation of heritage, and at its convivial pubs.
I'm always impressed by how much there is to see and experience on this amazing island. I hope you've enjoyed our look at Southeast England. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rick Steves. Until next time, keep on traveling.
That was amazing. They're all great. That might have been my favorite one so far. The Cotswolds was great. They're all great. Love it. I love these videos. Thanks, guys, for watching along with me. And if you could answer my questions, you guys are always really great at that. I'd really appreciate it, and I can't wait to see them. Hope you're all doing well. If not, chin up. You'll be good soon. Don't worry. See you guys next time. Bye.